up, guys? It's Nando. Thanks for stopping by for another video. And I want to take this opportunity from the car, because I was just thinking about it, and talking a little bit of when is the best time to leave your iPhone and iOS. And now I started thinking about, with the price of phones, both iPhones and Android phones skyrocketing, is it still as feasible to leave iOS? What kind of things do you need to think about? What kind of things do you need to consider if you're planning to make that jump, that move? So hear me out. iPhone X retailed last year at $999. I mean, they still had the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus as not as expensive devices. And just recently, Samsung announced the Note 9 starting off at $999, as well as its more expensive model with 512 gigabytes and 8 gigs of RAM at $1,250. There's no way that Apple doesn't put out an iPhone X Plus or a more premium iPhone X that's going to cost well over $1,000. And I'm not talking just because of storage. I'm talking probably a bigger screen, a better screen, and better internal specs, storage and RAM. Obviously, well over $1,000, maybe $1,100, $1,200 at that. Now, of course, that also means that you don't have to buy that phone. You can buy probably the smaller iPhone, maybe the iPhone 9, 9 Plus, if they still go that route. Rumor has it they're not going to go that route. Rumor has it that iPhones are going to be all looking about the same. The only thing that's going to vary is the screen size, obviously. Notch on the top, and then you're going to have something along the lines of the size of the iPhone X, something a little bigger, maybe 6.1, and then the Plus version at like 6.4. So that had me wondering, if iPhones are obviously getting more expensive, and if Android phones are getting more expensive, overall, I'm referring to the big boys. I'm talking about Samsung, for example. What incentive do you have in leaving iOS behind for Android? Now, the thing is this. In that last video that I talked about, I covered the ecosystem. That ecosystem for Apple is getting tighter and tighter. As the years will go on, there's less and less chance, unless they completely change their whole mentality of doing business, that the ecosystem is going to become more friendlier and more easily to leave, or at least pick and choose the aspects of it that you want to participate in. For example, I use a MacBook Pro Touch Bar, I think the 1-year-old model or something along those lines. Not the most recent one. I use an iPad Pro, and I use the iPhone X. Most often I'm using an Android phone. In this case, I'm using Huawei P20 Pro. Soon it'll be the Note 9. But I do have the iPhone X. So really the iOS devices that I use on a daily basis is either the iPad Pro as my main tablet. I use it mostly for FaceTime. And then the MacBook Pro I use simply to edit these kind of videos. So I'm not necessarily in the ecosystem. I don't have anything tying me down. I don't have iMessage turned on, because I switch between devices frequently. I don't have an Apple Watch. I have had one. I do have AirPods, but I can use that with Android. But there's so many people out there that have iMessage turned on, Apple Pay turned on, their iPhone, their Apple Watch, their MacBook Pro, their iPads, and everything is linked well, everything's in the cloud, and everything's as a family unit. Apple wants you in that ecosystem because it means that you're going to come back. You're going to buy more of their products. That means they make more money, and they've just become $1 trillion company. There's nothing wrong with being part of the Apple ecosystem. However, for anybody out there who's been considering leaving, for people considering going to Android, now it's hard to argue in terms of price to go over to Android, because companies like Samsung, which are obviously the biggest company Android-wise in the United States, maybe the world. No, I think it's Huawei, but Samsung's up there. Their phones are just as expensive, if not more expensive. So where does that leave us? Here's the thing. There's still other Android phones out there that are cheaper and offer a lot of bang for your buck. I'm talking about the OnePluses of the world. I'm talking about LGs are cheaper, HTCs are cheaper. They're not cheap, but they're cheaper. The cheapest that I mentioned is OnePlus with their OnePlus 6. So if you're considering moving to Android, now with Android P coming out, you're going to encounter features with the software that closely resemble features that iOS with their gesture control, thanks to the iPhone X, has brought to the table. You're going to encounter a much smoother, better, refined operating system that maybe 2 to 3 years ago would intimidate you from making the changeover. You're going to encounter premium devices that several years ago you knew that if you went to Android, you'd run into bugs and lagging and just not as good cameras. I remember several years ago, the iPhone was, without a question, the best camera on a smartphone. And arguably, it's still one of the best, no doubt about it. But it isn't the best anymore, at least not until the new iPhones come out. We don't know how good those cameras are going to be. Now you're running with the OnePluses of the world that are very, very good cameras. The Huawei's of the world with 3 cameras. You're running with Samsung, and then you're running with the king of them all, the Pixel phone. The Pixel phone. I had the Google Pixel 2 XL, and that camera, those pictures, insane. And the phone is cheaper overall than it is to buy an iPhone X. Of course, again, you can buy the 8 or the 8 Plus, but focusing on just the X and what's to come. So if you're considering moving over to Android, you know that now you're going to have as good, if not better, cameras. You're going to have as good, if not better, hardware, let's say Samsung, Huawei, etc. You're going to have a much more refined operating system that's going to be easier to adapt to and understand. And you're going to encounter an operating system that doesn't close you off. Think Apple HomePod. The Apple HomePod is perfect example of how closed off the Apple ecosystem is. The darn speaker doesn't even allow you to connect to it as a normal Bluetooth speaker to listen to anything it is that you would normally listen to on a speaker. For example, if I was watching a YouTube video and I wanted to connect to my speaker to get better sound, I can't do it on the Apple HomePod as a Bluetooth speaker. You have to go through AirPlay. You have to make sure that it's Apple Music, so not Spotify and Pandora or Google Music. If that's not an example of something that we should not embrace, something that is scary, something that's literally telling consumers, you're going to use this as I want you to use it. And Apple has done that for quite a while, and I love Apple. I've told you the products that I have, but Apple year by year is starting to concern me. Somehow, some way, they continue to sell more and more. I think that at some point, consumers are going to realize, you know what? My hard-earned money doesn't get me far in the Apple ecosystem. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. That's my opinion. So I just want you all to understand that if you're thinking about making that switch, don't let the Samsungs of the world right now, in terms of the Note 9, the Galaxy S8 Plus or S9 Plus, and those kind of prices deter you from an operating system that's extremely inviting. It's welcoming, it's refined, and there's choices. In Android, you have a device for everyone. If you want cheap, you have it. If you want expensive, you have it. If you care more about camera, you have it. If you care more about specs, you have it. If you care about something that just is going to get the job done as a basic phone, you have it. With Apple, you either have to pay to play, or you're going to very quickly fall back. I'm finding that to be the case with my iPad Pro. The 10.5, it's the first gen, and it's starting to slow down on me in ways that I never expected that to happen. It's updated to the most recent software, and yet it lags and it makes the experience unpleasant. So let me know in the comment section below if you've considered the switch. What's keeping you from the switch right now? Is it still that ecosystem? How or what would get you to make that switch? And if you're somebody who switched from Android over to iOS, what caused you to switch that way? Or are you someone like myself who loves technology, and honestly, if money's not an issue, I would get the best of both worlds all the time. A lot of times money is an issue for me, as it is for most people watching this video. So let me know in the comment section below, and hopefully we can get some good discussions going, guys. I know this is more of a rant style. Hopefully you don't mind it. I like to bring you guys these videos that come straight from the dome, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Like always, it's so important to stay geeky. Peace, salute,